All right, good morning. Let's call our meeting to order. I think we have handled all of our hot issues at the last minute, so we appreciate your being here. It's nice to have a full room with us. This is the September 29th meeting of the Mississippi State Board of Education. I'm Rosemary Altman. I serve as the chair, and we will begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. East, and then followed by the invocation offered by Dr. McGehee. If you would stand, please.
Join the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would bow your heads. Dear Lord, we ask your blessings on our meeting today as we decide policy and procedures to guide our 422,000 young people across the state. Our students, our staff, and administrators under our care during the school year as they are being prepared for another step in life to learn skills to provide them with the ability to create, communicate, and cooperate with each other to build a better life and a better tomorrow. We also ask that you watch over our friends in Florida dealing with their latest storms across its state, and that you give guidance and care will be their state, local leaders as they take care of each other. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. McGehee. Certainly, those of us in this part of the state who went through Katrina, we have a real heart for those people in Florida, and all of the students that are displaced, schools that have been inundated. So they have a yeoman's task ahead of them. It'll take them months and months to recover, and years, actually. Right. And so we certainly want to keep them in mind. We have our first item is the approval of the minutes from the August 18th, 2022 board meeting. Do we have a motion on those?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the next item we have is our the adoption of our agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, are there any items on the consent agenda you'd like pulled out for separate discussion?
X5M and X5Q.
Okay, let me get to the right page here. M, okay, and Q. All right, M is approval to revise selected policies and procedures in the, okay. And then Q is the accreditation for charter schools. Okay. We have both of these. Do we have a motion to approve, to pull M and Q out of the consent agenda for separate discussion? I mean, a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right. Now, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended? I mean, the agenda as amended. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. We have no recognition ceremony for today. I would like to say that once again, the alternate site has had to become another alternate site. With some of you may not know, but that the building at Central High School where the department is housed is being renovated with a new roof and some interior renovations. So the department's had to relocate, and they're in various places. But then with the water crisis in Jackson, we had to have the second alternate site. So Dr. Benton and her people, she will address this more, but they have done wonderful job, an unbelievable job in taking care of residential children at the school for the blind and the deaf, being able to continue providing services for everybody while they're all working at alternate site number 2. And we look forward to the day that we can get back to the department and everybody can be back under one roof. And but we do appreciate the efforts that are made. This is not easy to run a department this size in constant state of flux. And that's pretty much what they've been in for the last several months. So we appreciate the effort and all the work that's done, and certainly we appreciate the Mississippi School Board Association for letting us use their facilities while we're in this situation, and they've been very helpful to us, so we appreciate that. Now we will have our reports from our, from the state superintendent.
Yes,
Get
ma'am.
back on the right place in the agenda.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Altman, and good morning, everyone. We have had a busy and exciting month meeting with teachers and district leaders across the state in regional meetings. And our staff have been very busy preparing for the release of the highly anticipated accountability grades that you'll hear later today on the agenda. I want to begin with giving you an update on the facilities renovations that are taking place at Central High School that Ms. Altman referenced. We have been making steady progress there, but we are about a month behind because of the weather and different things that have occurred. I see some sad faces on staff right now. But we are hopeful that the weather will be stabilized and allow us to recover some of that time. But regardless, you can depend on that we will continue to do the work, advance the work, scattered across Metro Jackson area and other alternate locations. But I just want to commend the staff for their flexibility and ability to pivot and adjust and maintain the quality of service to our stakeholders. Members of the executive leadership team and I have been traveling across the state, completing regional superintendent meetings and teacher advisory council meetings. We visited all 6 RESAs for the superintendent meetings and met with members of the Teacher Advisory Council in Oxford, Gulfport, and Ridgeland. We also had the opportunity to meet with 25 new superintendents for a full-day training sponsored by MASS, the Mississippi Association of School Superintendents. During this meeting, new superintendents were presented information on accreditation, data and reporting, federal programs, and the Mississippi Code of Ethics. And Dr. Birchfield, as well as the new superintendents in attendance, were very appreciative of our staff members not only sharing information, but fielding questions that they had top of mind. Now, these meetings, they took some time and planning, but they were well worth it. There is nothing like meeting face-to-face with those that we are serving and to hear challenges and successes that they're experiencing each and every day. The superintendent's meetings were also well attended in the 6 sessions that I mentioned, and we have touched now directly almost all of the superintendents in our state. So we're excited about that. We're about 90% face-to-face interactions, and close to 150 teachers attended the teacher advisory session. A real positive that occurred in the session that took place right in this room. It was our first meeting. And there was a teacher in attendance from the Children's Hospital. She serves the children that find themselves there for extended periods of time. And she heard about the on-demand tutoring program that Dr. Marla Davis oversees. And Dr. Davis helped facilitate a conversation and was able to connect that teacher with the company providing the services. And now that service is also available to children at the hospital that may be there for extended periods. So I share that just as a bright spot of some of the good things that are coming out of those sessions. I've continued to meet with state leaders and legislators through the month. I had the opportunity to meet with House Education Chair Richard Bennett and Co-Chair Kent McCarty while we were in Gulfport, as well as Senator John Polk and House Speaker Pro Tem Jason White, and had a really nice meeting with Lieutenant Governor Hoseman. These meetings are important because they help strengthen our relationships with these parties and these individuals, all in service to advancing opportunities and outcomes for children across our state. I'm also pleased to share that the U.S. Department of Education has highlighted Mississippi's telehealth initiative in its newly released back-to-school checklist for parents and families. You know, we have been told that because of Dr. Wright's vision and then the vision of UMMC and that partnership, that we are in the position to have one of the most comprehensive telehealth initiatives in the nation. So we're really excited about the work that Dr. Gavin and Mr. Clemens are doing on our end to make that a reality. This month, staff and I also had the opportunity to participate in 3 statewide convenings. The first was the Mississippi Special Education Group, the Council for Exceptional Children. They had an annual conference in the Jackson metro area, and Dr. Jennifer Boykin serves as the president of that organization, as well as Bobby Richardson on her team. They sit on the board. But what was so exciting about that session were there were 200 plus special education teachers in the room, and it was a Friday afternoon, and they could have checked out early, but they didn't. They were there, they were engaged, and you could tell from their facial expressions and their enthusiasm that they love their job. And if they love their job, that's translating to the students they serve. We also had the opportunity to attend the Teaching Leading Solutions Group, which Dr. Burson oversees, and that includes leaders from across the MDE, as well as universities, school districts. And in that meeting, they're really looking at how can we recruit and retain our educators and prepare them and then support them to keep them in the profession. That was a wonderful opportunity, and I thank you, Dr. Burson and Dr. Van Cleve, for inviting me to that, because it also provided an opportunity to interact with 3 of our deans from our universities at Delta State, the University of Southern Mississippi, and William Carey. And then on Monday of this week, I had the good fortune to participate in a session with 40 school leaders from across Mississippi in the PREPS-sponsored CEO Academy, and it's not chief executive officers. It's in fact people that are aspiring maybe for that role, but more importantly, they're wanting to network with colleagues and really tackle issues and grow professionally in leadership. So those were really exciting opportunities that either the team or myself had the opportunity to participate in. But the last thing, and probably one of the most exciting things this month that we were able to engage in, were school visits. So over the month, 7 districts and schools I was able to visit. They included schools in Newton County, Noxubee County, Leake County, Newton City, Union Public, Meridian, and Grenada. And each district is very unique, but they all shared that same heart and same dedication to the students and the belief in working hard to make sure that every child has the opportunity for high quality instruction each and every day. I will spotlight the last district, Grenada. We were there, I guess it's a week and a half ago, and while we were there, Dr. David Dagnall joined us in visiting the upper elementary. They call it the Green Top, and I have a short video clip that I'll share where Ms. Carol Thorpe, the principal there, takes you on a tour so you can see in about 5 minutes what we experienced. And I think it's just a glimpse of great things that are happening in districts across the state. So, yes.
You want to show the video?
Yes,
Want
ma'am.
to do it now?
Yes, ma'am. It's a great way to start our meeting. And again, the principal is Ms. Carol Thorpe, and it's Grenada Upper Elementary 4 and 5, grades 4 and 5.
Hello, welcome to Grenada Elementary 4th and 5th. I'm Principal Carol Thorpe, and I'd love to show you around. Please follow me. At this time, students are moving to their activities. Our students attend 5 activities during the week: PE, art, music, library, and Discovery Lab. And speaking of the Discovery Lab, I want to show you all about it. We do everything from dissecting starfish and owl pellets to making different kinds of simple machines. This is Mr. Tipton, our Discovery Lab teacher.
We're here learning about natural renewable resources. So we've learned about the sun, about water, and now we're talking about wind. So the students are building windmills to represent how we use wind as a natural renewable resource. Yes, right here. There you go. Excellent job.
This is Louie, our hedgehog. They like to call him Sonic.
The next stop on our tour is the gym. What you're going to see is Drum Fit. We actually purchased Drum Fit when we were recognized as Blue Cross Blue Shield's healthiest school in Mississippi, and our children love it. One interesting thing about our gym is that it's a gymatorium. And so not only do we have our PE classes, health classes there during the day, but it also transforms at night to become a way that our students can showcase their talents. For instance, our show choir Pizzazz, that's made up of 4th and 5th graders. We also partner with Charlie Worsham and Follow Your Heart. Our students learn ukuleles in music class, and they are able by the end of the year to actually play songs on their ukulele. We want to address the whole child at Grenada Upper, and our children have the opportunity to participate in many other activities throughout the day. This year, we introduced a broadcast team that produces a morning news program. All of our teachers tune in early. The children look forward to it, and this is one way they never forget the announcements. Additional activities that we offer after school are our 21st Century Skills classes. That would include our book club, PE, our math club, and music. They're a lot of fun, but they're actually still learning. Archery is something that started off rather small for us, but now it is huge. Last year, our elementary archery team won first place in the state tournament. We are about to head into our very beautiful library where, yes, there is a tree house right in the middle, so follow me. This is our librarian, Chastity Johnson, and this is Miss Miners, her assistant. 6 years ago, when I became principal, we started an accelerated reader program. I found that this is an important way to build strength in our students.
Well, we use the treehouse as a motivator for reading. When students reach 75 AR points, they're allowed to come in during the morning times from 7 to 7:30 to sit in the treehouse.
When they reach 300 points, they get this Letterman's jacket, and this is a very, very big deal at our school, and we make it a big deal because we do post this on social media. Even in the classroom, students are having fun at the Green Top. Teachers know how to tap into students' playful side, and we believe there's a correlation between an atmosphere of fun and games and high academic achievement. That may help explain how our school scored an A in last year's state performance assessments. We are so proud of this. We are so glad you got to come and tour our beautiful school. Parents, we would love to give you a private tour. We'd love for you to come and tour some of our classrooms or any of the other interesting rooms that we have. So we invite you to call our office at 662-226-2818 between 7 and 4 o'clock, and we will get you set up for that tour.
So, Ms. Altman, I think you can see why this principal might have been Mississippi's Principal of the Year last year. But great things were happening in all 7 of those schools and districts, and this just gives you a glimpse of some of the great things that we saw and the confidence we can have in our teachers and the leaders in place. So, thank you.
Great, good report. You know, I was thinking while the video was going about STEM classes and
Yes,
their
ma'am.
discovery class, nothing gets a 5th grader more excited than doing some of those classes. And I never knew hedgehogs were such a big deal until
They're a big deal.
till my granddaughter was there, and somehow she got to be the keeper of the hedgehog on the weekends. So we carted that thing around a lot, so.
And I will add, since you mentioned about the STEM piece, that this particular school is part of our district, part of our District of Innovation, and they actually have that Project Lead the Way initiative all the way through elementary up to high school. So,
Well, that's exciting. Good things going on. So this last month, I have, it's been mostly telephone, emails, and conversations. I've talked a couple of times with our consultants that are doing our superintendent search. Dr. Benton and I have been in constant contact and have had a meeting. Ms. Amos and I have worked together on several things. So it's just a matter of keeping things moving and keeping things going in the right direction. And we're making good progress in our consultant search, with our consultant in our search, and we'll get a report on that later on today. So we've had a busy week, a busy month, and I know Dr. Benton has been on the road a lot, and, but making good contacts and letting people know that they're there to support whatever's going on in the school district. So our next item is our student representatives report. We'll have one report today, and it is a video. The video does have a little wind noise in it, so it's not here, it's in the video, but I think you can hear well enough. This is from our junior representative, Charlie Frugier.
Hi, what's up, Board of Education? This is Charlie Frugier. I'm currently in Washington, D.C. I'll be here until late January, if you don't already know. So while I'm here, it's my assignment to film a video updating y'all on two things. I'm going to update you on my home district, Oxford, and then I'm going to update you on national education policy. So recently, I've done a lot of thinking about students' mental health and violence in our schools. We all know that the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated a lot of these problems, and our kids are hurting mentally, and they're lashing out physically. So I'm a numbers guy, and I really like good statistics to show how broad a problem really is. So here's one for you. Children's hospitals report that self-injury and suicide cases among 5 to 17-year-olds is up 45% from 2019 to 2021. Here's another one. In a 2021 survey by Education Week, they found that 2 in 3 teachers have reported students misbehaving more than before the COVID-19 pandemic. With all of that being said, I believe that we can agree this is a problem. If any of you can recall my interview for this position, I told you all that one of my biggest concerns is students' mental health and violence among students. I also told you all that I have no clue what the solution is, and I won't pretend like I do. However, I can guarantee that this is a problem. The tricky part is there are a lot of parts to this problem. The part I want to talk about today is the national counselor shortage. Nationally, nearly 40% of schools did not have a psychologist in the first year of the pandemic. In 2021, only 8% of schools met the National Association of School Psychologists ratio of one psychologist to 500 students. Only 14% of schools met the American School Counselor Association's ratio of 1 to 250 students. program would be that teachers would have more on their plates. Like I said, I don't know what the solution is. I don't completely know why this is a problem and why it's this broad. However, I do know it's time to start plugging some of these holes before it gets worse. I look forward to reporting next month. Thank you.
All right, we'll move into our reports from our education subcommittees. We have two, academic achievement, pre-K. Mr. East.
Ms. Altman, Mr. Miller and Dr. Hill and I met yesterday with a review from the staff. Great things that are going on. Today, of course, you'll see the work of the social studies review that's been going on. It's going out for APA. Went through those very detailed. We'll tell you from a committee standpoint, the amount of man hours, the people in touching every question that was asked, they've done a great job. Looking forward to today and into that was placed on the agenda. Had a great report from early childhood, great report from the tutoring and the things that we do through the ESSER funds that we've used. Was able to meet the state special education director, Ms. Boykin, or Dr. Boykin. So a great committee meeting yesterday, and several items from the agenda.
Good. Dr. McGee, your food performance and accountability.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. We had a meeting prior to the board meeting today, Mr. Jacobs and myself, and also Dr. Vanford and Allen. We applaud on their efforts with the accountability piece this year, always opening and asking questions and maybe not giving them the answer that some districts won't, but the districts are there. We applaud the efforts of our teachers, our students, and our administrators because our accountability model looks excellent moving forward. What a great job they've done since 2019, and we ask them to do it again this coming year. And I thank Dr. Vanford and Allen for their work.
All right, good. Our first item for discussion is to begin the administrative procedure process to revise the 2022 Mississippi College and Career Readiness standards for social studies. Ooh, this looks serious with all this paperwork. All
There's no visual there.
540 pages or whatever. I know y'all bring these big books so to make us know that you're out there working.
It's just a visual representation.
Good morning, Chairman Altman and the members of the State Board. We are very excited to bring forth to you today for your consideration for public comment, the 2022 Mississippi College and Career Readiness Standards for the Social Studies. In March of 22, you may have recalled Mr. Mike Kent approached the board and updated you guys on the status of the state board, or excuse me, the state social studies standards and the MDE's plan to move forward. Since that time, the MDE team, along with a very dedicated, talented, and passionate group of social studies educators representing all of Mississippi, have tirelessly reviewed all public comments received on the previous iteration of the document and provide the very best social studies standards for Mississippi today. We do have a very small representation of those educators present with us today, while others are joining us via live stream. At this time, I would invite those present to stand up and allow us to recognize the hard work of the entire team.
Before you sit down, tell us what districts you're representing here, second row.
Antonio Watson, McCollum School District.
Okay. Biloxi, okay.
The Christian Farm, West Tallahatchie School District.
All right. Good, and then one in the back. Good, thank you. We appreciate all your hard work and the time you've given to this. You may proceed.
Thank you. The binders, as Ms. Altman mentioned, illustrate the journey of work that we have forged since March of this year. Although we won't go into this much detail in our presentation, I promise. We would like to highlight some of the work that we believe has led to this excellent set of social studies standards. The development and the implementation of state standards is the cornerstone of developing a workforce that is prepared to flourish in the global community. While local school districts get to choose the teaching methods and the materials that they use in their classrooms, the state content standards outline the skills and the knowledge expected of students in each grade level and each subject. All learning objectives housed in these Mississippi College and Career Readiness standards for the social studies remain centered on 4 areas of knowledge and skill: conceptual understanding, fostering inquiry, collaboration and action, and integration of content skills. The knowledge and skill that we're preparing our students with actually fits nicely under Goal 2, which states that all students will graduate from high school prepared for college and/or career. This slide just shows the progression that we've made throughout really 2022, the end of 2021 and 2022, and the evolution of our standards and how we got here today. In 2020, the Mississippi Department of Education convened a group of Mississippi social studies teachers and educators to revise what at the time was the 2018 Mississippi College and Career Readiness Standards for Social Studies. Once the revisions were complete, the Mississippi Department of Education in December of 2021 sought public feedback about the 2021 draft of the standards. Approximately 349 members of the public submitted written comments from December 17th of 2021 through February 4th of 2022. In addition, we had 43 people that provided feedback during a public hearing that we held on January the 28th of 2022. So in May of 2022, the MDE convened a group of 62 social studies educators from all 4 of Mississippi's congressional districts, as well as the Choctaw Tribal School Nation, 7 post-secondary faculty, 10 MDE content experts, and all of these folks reviewed all public comment and determined whether further revisions were needed. Each educator that participated, each of the 62 educators that I mentioned that participated, were selected through a rigorous application process, selected based on experience and knowledge that they have in the grade level and or the secondary course that they teach or taught. The social studies teachers consulted with an additional 181 educators within their school districts as part of their review and revision work. So we set up a process where even though we only brought 62 to the table to actually do the work, we had them out in the field collecting additional feedback from teachers and colleagues, which resulted in another 181 educator participants in the process. So from June through August 2002, the Educator Review Committee worked to review, evaluate, and respond to each and every public comment that we received in that period at the end of 2021, the beginning of 2022.
So as you have just heard from Ms. Clemens, our background and our journey with the Mississippi College and Career Readiness Standards for our social studies, what I'm going to do is to share with you just a few slides of some of the work that the teachers and the committee put into this. So on this slide that you will see, this was part of the pre-work that the teachers were given to do, and as Ms. Clemens mentioned, they were charged to take it back to their district to speak to other members of their team within the district and everything. So with this, the feedback from their colleagues, so we got together in grade bands then on their expertise as who they were meeting with. So they examined whether the suggested changes aligned to critical content that the students would need to know in order to be successful, whether the standard needed clarity or rewording to promote understanding, whether each standard was in the appropriate sequence, but most importantly, they reviewed the public comment and they made the suggestions as to what needed to be done with the public comment. On this slide, you will notice that this is the public comment matrix. So this is summarizing the Educator Review Committee's responses to the public comment. So within the pre-work, they listed, but we compiled each committee member's responses, and this is the document that we came up with. The matrix includes only the 2021 draft standards for which a public comment was made regarding that standard. You'll also see the Educator Review Committee's responses to each of the public comment, and then the final version that was recommended to be updated for our 22 Mississippi College Career Readiness standards for the social studies. Based on the public input and the Educator Review Committee's work, the 2022 Mississippi College Career Readiness Standards for Social Studies includes 158 revisions to the 2021 draft version. The primary revisions included the restoration of content examples that were previously removed for the instructional planning guide, the reordering of some of the standards, and rewording and clarification to promote understanding for our students. So on this slide, just like our existing social studies standards, the 2022 standards focus on the mastery of the 5 social studies strands, which are civics, economics, geography, civil rights, and history. So the 5 social studies strands, they remain integrated throughout each of the K through 12 courses in social studies. This slide that you are looking at, it provides you a side-by-side illustration of the history strand in kindergarten. It's comparing the 2021 draft of the Mississippi College Career Social Studies standards to the new 2022 standards. If you'll notice, you will see that the standards, some of the verbiage changed to make clarity, but they also reinstated the examples, and therefore we felt that this was what was needed. Throughout the college and career social studies standards, again, the examples were reinstated, and we just felt like that was a very important piece.
So in conclusion, on behalf of the MDE content staff, I'd like to express our sincere gratitude once again to the educators that spent countless hours on the refinement of the 2022 social studies standards, as well as to Tammy Crissetti for spearheading this Herculean effort. We thank you so much. And with this, the final revision or approval of the social studies standards after APA, the work will begin by providing professional learning opportunities beginning in the spring of 2022 to teachers, and will continue through the 2023-24 school year. After the APA closure, we will send this information to our instructional materials publishers to begin the development of our Mississippi-specific content for instructional materials for adoption in our 2024-25 school year. Thank you.
At this time, we will entertain any questions that the board might have of us.
Anyone, Mr. Miller?
Absolutely.
From where this process started, when the APA initially went out, the overwhelming, I think is an appropriate word, amount of comments that we had, and how y'all and the committee members have handled all of that. To take a step back, evaluate those comments, because from where you started, to where we are now, there's significant change.
That's correct.
But to me, the most important thing is that we got the input from those who are going to be teaching this. An overwhelming amount. So all of you that are here, thank you for your work on that. I think we're all going to be happy with this now. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank Jean Cook and Shandaria Minor for their assistance with ensuring that we got the word out and helping with this effort. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? This has been a very tedious and time-consuming process, and we do appreciate the work you've done. You have any comments, Dr. Benton?
No, ma'am, I think, Ms. Warner has
Well,
one.
I just
I'm
have one
sorry.
comment. What exactly are we voting on this? Are we voting to approve this, or?
We are voting today, Ms. Wilmer, to approve this to go out for public comment
Okay,
for
so
the
we're not
administrative
approving-
procedures process.
We're not
Yes.
approving this to go in as part of the curriculum. We are just approving this
For
so
public.
that other people can make comments on it.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am. And our goal, our hope is to bring back the final version with any comment, November 10th, when we meet again.
I'm not sure exactly the page, but it's like page 64 or 5. And it goes throughout the whole process. There are several, that people are concerned with perhaps the terms CRT or Marxist therapy and things. Those were the comments from some of the people. And then in the next column over, the response, I thought dismissed the comments completely. It basically said, no, this does not cover that. Let's move on. I mean, it didn't address, to me anyway, exactly what the people were concerned about. To me, I just got the impression that the public's comments, or the public comments, were dismissed by saying, oh, no, that's not covered here. Can you address that?
Yes, I will say that many of the public comments, we had to take them as we received them. Whatever was stated, that's what we had. So when we got the teacher committee together and they did their pre-work and then we did our face-to-face work, those teachers or educators were only able to respond to what was the written comment. They weren't able to ask any questions for clarification. They were just able to respond to that written comment. And so what they did is they took the written comment and they paralleled it to whatever objective or standard it was that they were referencing. And in their professional and educational opinion, they didn't see that in that standard. And so that is why the response is what it is. It's because they didn't see it. I will say, we did have deeper conversations about each one of them than what is referenced in the matrix, because the matrix itself is quite voluminous already. If we had tried to capture the conversation that was had on each comment, it probably would have been one of these binders. So I can say to you that we did acknowledge each and every comment. We did compare them to the standard to see if, in fact, in the educational and professional opinion, if that was thought to be the case. There were deep and extended, exhaustive conversations, and then the decision was made as to whether, in fact, there was a belief that that existed in the standard or that it did not exist in that standard.
So I just want to clarify what I'm voting for today.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not voting to accept this. I'm only voting to disseminate it to the public again.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
That's
Correct.
it.
Right.
And it will come back to you, not next month, but I think it's
November.
slated for November, at the November
final,
meeting. Right.
I know you guys have done like yeoman's work on this. It's just that I have to make sure what I'm voting for.
Yes, ma'am.
This is like step 2 of the 3-step process.
That's right. Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments? Then we will entertain a motion to approve beginning the APA process for the social, all right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you in November.
Visual aids.
They need to be wearing those belts that people that work lift heavy things. All right, item 2 is approval of the 21-22 statewide accountability results. Dr. Vanderford and Alan are bringing us good news.
Good morning. As always, we'll start our presentation this morning with our vision and mission and identification of the goals in which this item is associated. So as you know, the vision of the Department of Education is to ensure that we have an educational system that gives students the knowledge that they must possess in order to be successful and flourish as citizens. And our mission is to provide leadership through the development of policy and accountability systems so that students are able to compete. This item is actually associated with all 6 goals outlined in the board's strategic plan. However, it specifically is tied to goals 1, 2, and 6. The Commission on School Accreditation met on Tuesday, September 27th, in its regularly scheduled meeting to approve the accountability results for the 21-22 school year, and also granted permission for submission to the State Board of Education for your official approval for release as official grades. We have a couple of slides that are just going to be reminders. I know you've heard this many times, but just for the public's sake, to ensure that everyone recognizes the fact that the State Board did grant approval for some temporary revisions to the accountability system for the 21-22 school year to account for some missing data from the 2019-20 school year as well as the 2020-2021 school year. So we had some 10th grade students in English 2 and Algebra 1 in the previous school year that had growth measured back to the 18-19 school year, which was, as you know, the last year that we administered the statewide assessments prior to the pandemic. And the approval for the modification to the business rules was to include the bank's scores for these high school end of courses from the high school end of course assessments for the 2021 school year used in accountability measure regardless of what grade that student was in. And as you recall, the United States Department of Education approved the state plan, or our addendum to that plan, to adjust these accountability measures and identify schools for school improvement. Just a few reminders about the accountability results, and we'll talk a little bit about this later on in next steps, but what we want to ensure that everybody is aware of is that when you look at the 21-22 accountability results, they're all based on how students perform during the previous school year, the 2021 school year, 22 school year, and how much academic growth that they've made since the previous school year. And we talked a little bit about this in our subcommittee this morning about how our accountability system relies heavily on academic growth, how much improvement a student makes from one year to the next. We also talked about in our previous board meeting when we brought the assessment results to you, our enrollment numbers in Algebra 1 and English 2, and that they were higher for the previous school year when they were not required to meet the graduation requirements. So for the 21-22 school year, we had fewer students assessed in these subject areas. And then just a reminder about some of the waivers that we've had in place, specifically around the graduation requirements. Students post-pandemic for the last 2 school years were granted some waivers for high school end-of-course assessments and the high-stakes accountability tied to those assessments for the graduation requirements. So just to kind of set the stage there to tell you a little bit in those couple of slides how these results differ from previous years. So at this time, I'll ask Mr. Bureau to walk through some of the specific results. We'll do some comparability analysis back to 2019, and then he'll provide you an overview of both district and school accountability results that were assigned.
Okay, I'm Alan Burrow, Executive Director of District School Performance. So I'll walk through the numbers for this year's accountability results. This first slide reflects the state level aggregate for each of the components that go into the accountability system. So those that are in green highlight rates that have increased since 2019. And then of course we have some shaded out areas for the time period we did not have data. Last year we reported out proficiency rates. We did not have any growth to report out. And you'll see several of the components have seen increases. Some have remained relatively the same from 2019, such as math proficiency, and reading proficiency is very close to what it was in 2019. So we'll talk about the aggregated data for the district level. This first slide reflects how grades were assigned, that distribution of grade assignments for districts and the counts. So we've got data going back to 2017, and then you'll see that that distribution of grade assignments has shifted upwards. You've got 45 A's this year, so that's the most that we've had for districts since this accountability system was enacted. And then fewer F's and D districts, so down to 5 F districts. Just as a note, the NA, those are new charter schools that we don't yet have data for. We can assign a letter grade, and we had a couple of those in 2019. We have one this year.
Mr. Burrows, could you speak a little louder, please?
Sure.
So, live stream can hear you.
All right, let me get this
Thank
closer
you.
too. So this table actually shows how those grades have shifted for counts, or counts of shifts in grades assignments. So the way to read this is to look at that far left-hand column, the 2019 grade, and we'll start with the C row, for example. So for districts that were rated a C in 2019, one of those were rated an A in 2022, 12 were rated a B, 20 stayed the same, and 1 dropped to a D. So that's the way we read this chart. Those that are the yellow shaded cells show counts of decrease from letter grade from 2019. The gray ones, they've stayed the same, and green, that is areas where districts have moved up a letter grade. So these are our top performing districts based on their composite score. When we add up all of those different accountability components, we get a composite, and this is the top 10 performing districts in the state. And I'll just pause on these slides. I won't read through all of them for you. And these are our lowest performing districts based again on that composite score. Okay, now we'll go down to the school level aggregate for accountability grades. Again, the same chart that we saw for districts. So again, a shift of the grade distribution upward. We have 29.8% of schools that are rated an A this year, and we have 41 schools that are rated at an F. And again, same table that we saw before, so this is shift in grade assignments. I should also note that for a school or a district to be included in these tables, they need to have a prior year's 2019 grade assignment and a 2022 grade assignment. So you won't match these grades to the total counts that you see in some of the other slides. And these are the accountability components that we use for high schools and districts. So as I mentioned before, we add up these points for each of these components to get our composite score that relates to the grade assignment. These are our highest performing 1,000-point schools, or schools with 12th grade high schools. And these are lowest performing 1,000-point schools. Okay, and these are the components for elementary middle schools, 700-point schools. And these are our highest performing 700-point schools. And these are our lowest performing 700-point schools. Okay, I wanted to point out to you that although we've seen significant growth this year, as Dr. Vanderford mentioned before, because we are measuring progress from the 2020-2021 assessment to this year, so in pandemic to this year assessment, wanted to point out that we still have 37 districts that increased proficiency in both reading and math. So roughly a quarter of districts did increase proficiency from 2019 to this year, and 59 of those increased a letter grade. So also for 1,000-point schools, about 40% of 1,000-point schools or high schools increased reading and math proficiency from 2019. And for 700-point schools, roughly a quarter of elementary middle schools increased reading and math proficiency from 2019.
Okay, our next steps are going to focus on some of the agency-wide efforts that will involve all of the programs within the department. I'd first like to start by thanking the communications team. They've worked tirelessly over the last several weeks. We had several districts that we asked to give feedback to us on an accountability toolkit that we developed in response to requests by districts and superintendents for a way to communicate these results. Since we are issuing accountability grades for the first year since prior to the pandemic. So they were very instrumental in doing this. The communications team also held a webinar for school districts immediately following the release of the toolkit so that they could walk through and provide an overview of its contents, and certainly offered all of the districts an opportunity for them to provide technical assistance in drafting their news releases. So within that toolkit, just a brief overview, was a draft news release that districts had and were able to use, a key facts document about the impact of COVID-19 on our 21-22 accountability results, and then a document that helped explain and individuals understand how the actual performance classifications or grades are calculated, and then an accountability adjustment summary. And now that we have the data, and the data is public, the agency will use the data and analyze it to focus on evidence-based actions in order to improve our proficiency rates across all content areas and all grade levels. We'll be looking further, as you know, in the months to come, we'll have our gap analysis that will take a look at the data by subgroups to help determine where the areas are with the greatest need for intensive intervention, as well as some acceleration support that may be necessary. And then we'll certainly promote the use of resources that we have available, such as our own demand tutoring and high dosage tutoring that will help address those identified learning gaps and to accelerate learning. We'll leverage community resources to extend learning opportunities for all students across the state. And then we'll look at internally our personnel and our resources and determine how to deploy those resources and what areas that are the greatest need and how we can best utilize the resources that we have available. And of course, all of these next steps will involve all of the staff throughout the agency in these efforts. At this time, we'll be happy to answer any of the questions that you might have regarding the 2021-22 accountability results.
Any questions?
I have
Comments?
no question. Go ahead, who is it? Mary?
No, nobody.
I want to go back and compliment again the public relations piece and how we notified school districts well in advance. I think that's very powerful. I guess the one sidebar is that I'll work as superintendent to teach school districts what embargo means, just for the fun of it. But that information to them to help through this process, I know that several of my peers have been very appreciative of that. And I know that took hours and hours of work. Thank you very much for getting that out to the school districts. I appreciate that very much.
Any other questions or comments about this?
If I could just
Sure.
add, Ms. Altman, on the last slide that Dr. Vanderford shared about what steps we would be taking internally, those steps are also things that we are encouraging our districts to do as well, as they really analyze their data and they go back to those proficiency rates, because they are to be commended for the great work that took place in response to the learning gaps for the pandemic, and then challenged to keep pressing even harder as we move into the upcoming year so that we can maintain that rate of progress.
I think what we've received today shows that when we got back to our normal, whatever that is now, that districts felt a sense of urgency to really get busy, and teachers and administrators stepped up and made a concerted effort to try to fill in that gap and to mitigate as much as they could the time that was off and the disruption that we had with school districts. So these are exciting results, and we commend those that are who have made such progress, and we challenge those who continue to struggle to look at what other districts are doing and to look at their own district and ask for help, do whatever they can do to help improve their work with their children. As I've said when I spoke to the superintendents, we're not asking anybody to go from an F to an A. We're asking for just show us progress, and that's show us some growth with your students, and that's encouraging to see what we've had. So thank you all for your work. I know you spend a lot of hours analyzing all this, and
They've done a great job.
I started to say, Alan loves those numbers, and we're glad.
Yep, and Deborah Donovan has been
Yeah.
a part of that too.
I think we should give a round of applause to all the schools.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I appreciate your saying that, because when I went down the list and looked, there were school districts on here that are now Cs that were under receivership or a state takeover, whatever you want to call it, not long ago. And so it's all about leadership. It's about setting goals and putting your shoulder to the grindstone and getting it done, and we appreciate that. So thank you all. Okay. Okay, our next item is an overview of our Mississippi Succeeds report card. Yes, we do need to vote on that. Thank you. I got so excited talking about it, I forgot we hadn't voted, so. Do we have while you're setting up, we're going to vote. Do we have a motion to?
We accept.
Okay. Ms. Werner and Mr. Jacobs, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for reminding me of that.
Are we all set?
We're ready.
Okay. Well, I appreciate Ms. Altman and the board the opportunity to come and share with you the Mississippi Succeeds report card. Dr. Benton was generous in inviting me to come and spend 45 minutes with you to talk about this website. There's a lot of information on here, but then this morning, right before we started, she clarified she meant 4 to 5 minutes, not 45 minutes. So I'm going to see if I can condense what I was hoping to say into a few minutes. The Mississippi Succeeds report card, which I believe the link is in the board minutes, or the board notes, was created in response to federal statute, federal law, the ESSA law, that all states were to produce a parent-friendly report card with key metrics that allowed for both the comparison of student subgroups, which I know we get a lot of questions about, as well as comparisons from schools to districts to the state. We worked in OTSS really aggressively with the academic side of the house as well as communications back in 2018 to release the first report card, and so now we are at 5 years of data in the report card. And we had a lot of input from parents and other community members to give us a sense of what it is that they wanted to see. We continue to build and enhance on the website. In part, we got some feedback from board members and community members to add features and functions and other tools to the report card. We've obviously been working with Alan and Dr. Vanderford, going through some of those COVID impact adjustments that obviously had to be affected, also affected the report card, and we had to make adjustments for that, various waivers and temporary rules and so forth. And we continue to evolve the system, and we'll continue to add information to it. One of the things I would just point out before getting into the report card itself is we thought about this as, from the parent perspective, is it needed to be friendly in the navigation, simple in the organization, get to information with a few clicks as possible, and it's really is something that you all can explore on your own, and if you get questions from parents or other community members across the state, you can share this website with them. And I would say that in part because of the important feedback from the field, we've been able to produce a product that has gotten national recognition for its quality and ease of use. And now, of course, as a technology person, I'm very terrified if I start clicking on things if everything's going to work the way I think it's going to work, because it's always the Murphy's Law, so to speak. It's always exciting as you do these presentations. So I'm going to start with the home page, and it's here. You can see at the very beginning at the top, there's an opportunity to search for individual schools or districts, as well as a feature we added in response to board questions about doing comparisons. So there's actually a comparison tool on the web feature, or the search feature, to compare schools and or districts to each other to get that as a further support for questions you may have. If I scroll down, the main section here gives you a chance to link to the state average, which I'm going to show you in a minute, the state view of this, but there's also a data map where you can look at this geographically over time across indicators and so forth. But there's also information about how the website works, how the users can access the information, and just guiding them through both in a written form as well as a video. And then the very bottom of the page has some tips in terms of how the web page looks and how you can navigate through it. So it's all pretty simple, pretty few layers and so forth. So, and this is where the moment of truth. So if we click on the state data link, I'm worried about there we go. Always worried about whether the network is working here in the building, but so it starts at the top of the page with some basic information about the state. There's obviously a parallel version of this for a district and for a school. And then it rolls through the accountability indicators. So Alan, a few minutes ago, shared with you the model of what indicators are in the accountability model, or what components rather. And so if you scroll through them, you can see here's math, there's the proficiency, the growth, and the growth of the lowest 25% in English, moving through other indicators. And the gauge here is to give you a very high-level view with a basic definition. But when you click on it, it enables you to go in and look at some detail. But before I dig into one of these indicators, there's other information here as well, information about assessments, there's information about teachers, and there's information about other measures that are of interest. And I would say that over the course of the school year, we add in additional information as it becomes available. For instance, NAEP results are coming up soon. We'll be sharing information about the school improvement designations, other information about per pupil funding that comes in a little bit later in the year, as well as the outcomes for high school graduates that gets updated each year in the spring. So more information is available as you go forward, but there's lots of rich detail. I know I'm probably already at the 4 minutes and before I get to 5. If I click on, say, for instance, the math proficiency, Again, just a couple clicks through. We always thought about this as a Netflix kind of thing, so parents would be used to look at the high level and then drill in for the details of what we're looking at. So you can begin to see how it begins to break down the proficiency, the state goals that we've set for it, but then breaking through groups by subgroups by gender, by race and ethnicity, as well as other indicators. And it gives you just sort of a high-level view. You can always sort of see the data laid out in a tabular form. There's even a download feature if you want to download all the data out of the website and so forth. And then the last thing I wanted to share was a particular school so that you can see how it looks for a particular high school. There was a very exciting conversation in this room before the board meeting started about which high school to show. I will credit Mr. East for helping us pick West Harrison. For those of you who have any comments about that, I would direct all those comments to Mr. East.
He is just trying to be an agitator on the Gulf Coast is what he's doing.
That's the suspicion, yes, absolutely. So I'm sure his phone will start buzzing here in a minute. So you can see then again the same question about the comparison, not only about the subgroups, which is part of the federal statute and the requirements, but also then comparisons across schools and districts to the state along those very same subgroups, along those same indicators. So you can see how West Harrison High School has performed. Again, the district is the middle bar, the school is the lower bar, the brighter blue, and it goes through, again, all the subgroups, and you can begin to see this. Now, again, we have multiple years. You can go back over time and see how these indicators have changed. And then one last thing I'm going to show you sort of from the heat map perspective. This was another one of the board recommendations that we put in place. You can go through and see this geographically. It's interactive. You can zoom in. You can select it by over time. You can select across indicators, and you can select by districts and then into the schools themselves. And that is what I wanted to show. I would encourage everyone to go and look at this and play around with it. All feedback is welcome. Things that you'd like to see, changes, we try to roll out these indicators or these additional features or tools or data elements as the requests come in, and we weave that into our roadmap and make changes based on what the field needs and what people want to know about our schools and our districts in this parent-friendly report card. And that is my presentation. Any questions, thoughts?
Well, let me say, because Dr. Elam and I think, are the two board members that were on the board when we started this process. You have moved us light years into the process, and it's I mean, if I can navigate it, it's pretty simple. So we appreciate what you've done. You have really done a fabulous job of putting information out there and putting it in a form where it's easy to read, it's easy to understand, and it has all the information that someone would need if they're looking at their own district or if they're curious about a district. And I think it's very helpful for a lot of different ways. So we appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And Deborah Donovan is our lead on this project. You couldn't be here today, so I'm riding without my Alan. Dr. Vanford had a chance to present with Alan. I'm missing my Deborah today,
Yeah.
but I will let her know and the team know about your appreciation for all their hard work.
Anybody else have any questions or comments about this? Okay. Thank you very much. All right, item 4 is grant awards. Dr. Gavin.
Good morning. We're bringing forth today 4 grants for the board's approval, 3 of which are modifications and 1 additional grant. Item 4A is a modification to the 21st Century Grant, where we're adding a year to this grant, extending it by a year and adding additional funds to the existing cohort there. Item 4B is a modification to the Early Learning Collaboratives. We're adding a total of $1.5 million to this, where we can also serve an additional 614 students. Item 4C is our MCOPS grant. We are adding an additional 17 districts to this for a total of 31 districts to be funded with MCOP funds. And then our last grant that we're bringing forth is to award the COVID-19 Public Health Workforce Grant. Those are funds that we received through the Department of Health.
Okay. Anybody have a question on any of these grants before we vote? I think they're all pretty standard. Do we have a motion to approve items 4A, B, C, and D? We'll take it. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good, thank you. Item 5 is approval to revise Mississippi Administrative Code 7397.1, State Board Policy. This relates to weapons.
As you may recall, in the July 21st meeting of the State Board of Education, the staff within the department asked the board to grant approval to submit this policy on weapons for the APA process in order to align the policy with the current state statute. The APA comment period was open from July the 22nd to April the 15th. During that process, we received 44 public comments, 5 of which were actually a request for a hearing. Of the remaining, we had 26 comments that were in favor of aligning the policy to current state law, and we had 13 that were opposed. Overall, those individuals that supported the alignment of the policy stated that for that reason, it should be done to ensure that state board policy did align with state statute, as well as this revision would provide clarity to individuals over what was allowable and what was not allowable when you discussed or considered weapons on a school campus. Just in summary, those that opposed generally cited 3 primary reasons consistently, and that was that we should restrict the use of guns or weapons on a campus to those that were certified law enforcement officers, and that teachers should actually be focused on instruction rather than the other duties such as this, and that allowing the weapons on a campus would just actually increase the likelihood of more violence occurring on campus. So that's just a brief summary. I know you had the opportunity to review those comments in your backup material, but just they primarily fell in 3 categories for those that opposed. At this time, as many of you know, we have been working with the School Safety Alliance, and so we wanted to just take this opportunity, since we were discussing this item all around school safety, for Mr. McGarity, who co-chairs that alliance, to just give you a brief update of the work that that alliance is currently doing.
Well, thank you, and good morning. So initially established as a joint mission between the Mississippi Department of Education and the Department of Public Safety through the Office of Homeland Security, the School Safety Alliance is comprised of nearly 40 members, including Commissioner Sean Tyndall with the Mississippi Department of Public Safety, Commissioner Andrea Sanders with Child Protection Services, State Superintendent Dr. Benton, Dr. Ronnie McGehee, who represents the, in addition to the State Board of Education, also represents the Mississippi Association of School Administrators and the Mississippi Association of Secondary Principals. Also joining us were representatives from the Mississippi Association of Professional Educators, the Parents Campaign, the Children's Advocacy Center, the Department of Mental Health, Mississippi Department of Human Services, the Mississippi Association of School Resource Services, the Mississippi Association of Police Chiefs, and the Sheriff's Association, along with judicial judges from youth courts as well. The first meeting of the School Safety Alliance was held on July 18th, in which several subject areas were identified for discovery and for evaluation, to include mental health, standards and training for school resource officers, student discipline, and potential legislative proposals. Most recently, the School Safety Alliance met on September the 27th, which was this past Tuesday, where we took a deeper dive into the subject area of mental health. Some just topics discussed there were shortages of mental health, which I believe Micah indicated earlier, or excuse me, not Micah, Charlie indicated earlier in his report. MOU regarding how law enforcement in schools could communicate due to the sensitivity of data that law enforcement gathers in their investigations, and how that may or may not impact that student the next day at school. And educator focus and self-care as well. There's been a lot of emphasis, as well it should be, on student mental health, but we cannot forget our educators as well, as the impact they have as leaders to continue on in their mission. related to trauma that they may have experienced by taking care of loved ones and others during the COVID pandemic. With that said, we're looking forward to additional meetings that we have upcoming over the next several months, and we'll be discussing these very important and sensitive topics with all members. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on this before we vote on this policy? Well, we appreciate the report and we appreciate the work that you're doing with this. Do we have a motion to approve this change in? Okay. Mr. Miller, do we have a second? Second. Dr. Elam? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Okay, on our consent agenda, we're going to make item M under the consent agenda, letter M, as item number 6. So we'll discuss it now, and that is approval to revise selected policies and procedures for programs within the Office of School Financial Service. Mr. Jacobs asked that we pull this out, and it has cleared the APA. So Dr. Gavin, if you can.
So was there a specific question?
I said, do you have
Okay.
a specific, if you're ready to answer, you have a specific question, or is there something
I
about
was
it?
just under chapter 71, which you and I have chatted about, curious why the word changing from will to may. It seems to me that we're relaxing rules when we use the word may instead of will.
Okay, Rule 71.3, I think the item that you're specifically referring to is item E and F. Item E and,
Wait a second. Not just E and F, but also C, E, and F.
okay, there's a couple of items here. We're changing the word from will to should, one, to be consistent with the language in all of those required statements. If you look at A and B, the word should is there also. So we're being consistent in our wording, but specifically, we're not changing the requirements of the statements that are going to be required. Rule 71.3 says required monthly reports to be furnished to the school, to be provided to the school boards. And it also says that the following required financial reports are to be presented at each regular school board meeting. So we're not changing the requirement. The statements are still required, and they list all the statements that are required. Specifically in items E and F, we're just giving the districts an option to either present the combined balance sheet, or you can present the current fund equity balance. So we're just simply saying you can use either option. It's not changing the requirement. It's not watering down what's required. The item specifically says that these reports are required monthly.
Should tells me you gotta do it, may tells me you might do it.
It is a requirement. We're not, the intent of that is not to change it to an option. Again, the rule says that these are required, and then it lists what the requirements are. It just gives you the options between, on those two items, that you can specifically use the combined balance sheet, or if you don't want to use that, you may use the current fund equity balance sheet. That's why we're using the word may there in lieu of will. It's just an option between those two statements.
Again, the one that really stirs me is the budget status. To me, it says you may present a budget instead of you should present a budget. Or you will present a budget.
Again, I understand your point, but the statement and the rule says that these are required reports, and then it's simply listing what should be included in those statements.
Anybody else have any questions about this? Or are you?
I appreciate it. There's two forms that can be used, and you're just giving the school districts the option to use one of the other forms.
That's correct.
Information has to be before the
on your balance sheet, correct. So it's simply saying you should either use a combined balance sheet or you should use the current fund equity balance. Instead of saying will, it's saying you should use one or the other.
And the bottom line is it gets us to the fund balance at that moment in time in the school district, right?
Correct.
It's about the forms, not about the process.
That is correct. And you must present all of these statements as the rule states.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Then I will entertain a motion on item M, which is letter M, which becomes item number 6 on our agenda. We have a motion as such.
So moved.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now we'll move to letter Q. This becomes item 7 on our agenda. This is granting accreditation to charter schools. It's approved by the Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board, and it's in accordance with Mississippi Code 3717-1. Dr. Vanderford?
Well, the approach is the same way as theirs.
Yeah, I started to say, well, Mr. Jacobs, you,
I just want y'all to clarify the wording in there that says we must do something versus, meaning we have no choice. And I understand the law, but I think we need to discuss that a little bit. It just seems kind of strange.
So if I may, I'll
Yeah, go
defer
ahead.
to Ms. Blau, since this is an interpretation of statute.
Sure. And that is verbatim from the statute. It does say must. Yes, sir. The State Board of Education must accredit the charter schools that are in operation based solely on the approval from the Charter School Board.
I guess part of my, going beyond that, I don't, why do we exist if we have to do something for that? But for accreditation, we have a pretty big operation right here that we spend a lot of money to credit to do that. Who does the charter board, who does their accreditation?
They don't. The Charter Board is not an accrediting authority, and that is most likely why the law says that the State Board of Education must do it, because the State Board of Education / NDE is an accrediting authority.
As I understand, we don't have nothing to do with accrediting. Our staff doesn't accredit those schools.
It is what the law says, that the State Board of Education must accredit the charter schools that are in existence. Now, the charter schools do have to go through an extensive application process in order to be approved. And they have to, they're on 5-year contracts and they have to be renewed. So they've got 4 years, basically, to show what they are capable of. And then they come up for renewal at that time. And there's extensive criteria both for the application and the renewal cycle. And their accountability standards are also their performance. They call it their performance framework. And it's new. They've just gotten a new one of those. So there are a lot of criteria that is in place to ensure that they're in compliance with the Charter Act. And the Charter School Board does oversee that. But the law does say that the State Board of Education must accredit charter schools.
Seems like we ought to have some authority involved in that. I think we help fund them and everything else. We ought to be able to, I just don't see how come we must do something versus we have.
Yes, sir.
Technically, we can't even ask questions.
And in order to change that, it would take, a legislative update in order to get that changed. But that is the way that it is currently worded, verbatim from the statute.
It seems like taxpayers are paying twice for something instead of once. As far as accreditation standards and who it goes through, these folks aren't cheap to do their expenses. I'm assuming the charter school have an expensive crowd doing that too, so why not combine it into one? And I know the answer.
I can't speak to the money flow with any authority. I can speak to the law. But, that is what the law says. Yes, sir.
it's one of those things that we're mandated to do that we may not agree with, but it says what it says, so we don't have much choice.
I thought we ought to discuss it.
Well, I think that's fine. It clarifies some things.
Charter schools, when we say accreditation, they still have to follow the same standards?
No, sir.
On that piece, based on the work of the charter school
They do report annually, do they, to the?
They do.
Yeah,
That-
they
that is
have
correct.
to give an annual report to the charter school board.
Charter school board has the power to pull back and say, no, you're not.
That's correct.
That is correct, and the Charter Act is very clear on that. Yes, sir.
And the Charter Act clearly defines what state statutes that the LEAs or non-publics follow, as well as those that the charters must follow or that they're exempt from.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this? All right, do we have a motion to approve item Q? Letter Q item, okay. Dr. Elam, do we have a second? Mr. Miller, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Then we will do the remainder now of our consent agenda, which now becomes item 8, I believe. So we will entertain a motion to approve A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, G, I, J, K, L, N, O, P. Do we have a motion to approve those items? Mr. Miller and Dr. Barrett, any questions on any of these? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We will now, before we go into entertain the motion executive session, I think Dr. Barrett wants to share something with us.
Yes, I just wanted to say, the 24-hour tutoring that we adopted, it is a great resource. I had all my students log on in the classroom and said, get your vocabulary, just, see if they can help you, tell them you need help, and we just want to try it out. And they give excellent feedback, they ask a lot of questions, and then when they're finished with their report, it sends all of the chat to the teacher, so you can see everything the student asked, and I was very impressed with it. And then from the parent standpoint, my son's in college algebra, I'm an English teacher, so I'm no help there. And I said, Baylor, go on, try this paper, and it helped him with his homework, and I was really impressed with the program, so I just wanted to let you know that as a teacher and parent, it was a very good resource.
Good, thank you.
That's great. Dr. Marla Davis, is she in here? She needs to do the
Yeah.
movie star way because she has worked so incredibly hard behind the scenes. We have a lot of folks like that, but to make this a reality and champion the message. So Dr. Barrett, that's music to our ears because this is a great place to say that's one of the ways that we have used these funds, the ESSER funds and resources that have come into us, and data and feedback like you're giving us gives us evidence that we can use if that's a tool or resource that we want to sustain in the future. So thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Good, good. Now, I will entertain a motion that we consider executive session.
I move that the board consider making a closed determination for the need to go into executive session.
Okay, do we have a second to that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'd ask that everyone clear
In accordance with Mississippi Code annotated Section 254174A and K, the State Board of Education has moved to go into executive session to discuss discrete personnel matters related to the state superintendent search process for the Department of Education.
Oh, help yourself. I don't know why they gave you so many. They know I like them. That's one. That's nice. Okay, we'll call our meeting back to order. We just finished an executive session. We got an update from our consultant who is advising us and helping us with the superintendent search process. And we had a good discussion with him, but no action was taken during the executive session. Do we have a report on any meetings that you've attended? Ms. Warner?
I was asked to meet with the superintendent of Itawamba School System, Donnie Bell, one of the state reps. They were just, actually, we talked a little bit about with Wendy, career technical. That was one of the things they were very much interested in. Since they know I'm passionate about it, that's why. So
Good,
yeah.
good.
And it was a nice meeting. There were about 6 people there, and it was actually a couple of hours.
Yeah, well, good. Okay. Anyone need approval to attend out-of-state meetings? All right, hearing none, then we will entertain a motion to adjourn. I think we are done. Mr. Jacobs and Dr. Elam, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned.